Hello everyone and welcome to my first video about editing StarCraft 2 models in Blender. As you can probably hear, I'm not a native English speaker, so I hope you will understand me well, because I might have some accent and maybe not so good pronunciation, but we will see. Hopefully you will understand me well. So the first thing should be probably about how to work with Blender and how to make it use StarCraft 2 models. So first we need to download the N3 add-on master, which is a plugin that will help us import and export the M3 models that StarCraft uses. And it's quite easy. You just download it, copy all the things that are inside, and go to where your Blender is installed, and go to add-ons and just put it here. I think maybe I need to put it in a folder. Hopefully it is right this way, because I don't really remember how I did it the last time, because right now I'm doing it on a completely new computer. So this is actually the first time I've done it in a while. Then let's go to Blender, which I hope you can install by yourself, that I don't have to do a tutorial for that as well. And what we should do is, where it should be, I think it should be somewhere in the settings, user preferences, add-ons, and it should be somewhere in here. Yes. And now it should work. At least I hope. I think you can also save user settings, so you don't have to do it every time you launch Blender, because that would be really annoying. Yep, and it works. So right now what we do is delete every single piece that is from default in the scene, because we are not going to use that anyway, and it would only do some problems. I think this can also be saved. Save startup file. This means that every time you launch Blender, it will start like this, and not with the camera and this cube in the middle. And I think this episode should be about, let's say, the basics, and should help you navigate in the Blender. So I think we should get some StarCraft model first. So let's go to data, and this is not really the good view. This is also first installation of StarCraft 2 on this computer, so it's not really helping too much. I don't know how it was. Nope. Yeah, this is how it should work. And let's say we want nope. It's here, models. And I usually click on this one because it loads first, and then I can just go and find something that I want. Also, it is good to click on this, because then you will see the model. It's good to resize the window to make it as big as you need, so you can easily see the the look of the model. And when you press right mouse button and hold Ctrl, you can rotate it. Pretty easy. And I think we could start with Hellion, because it doesn't have too many animation bones. It's just a vehicle. It's much more easy to work with something like that than, for example, Hydralisk, which has a lot of movement. I think I should just put it on my desktop. You can put it anywhere you want, but I do it this way because it's just pretty easy. I can put it on my desktop and delete it when it's not needed. And this is how it looks. Pretty normal Hellion. And now I want to show you everything that we can use here. I hope I won't forget anything, but it's quite a lot of things, but I think you can figure some of it on your own. So first we can see what we have here. First is armature, which is the animation skeleton, and that's what makes all the animations. And also there are the attachment points and all other things. There's quite a lot of that actually, but I will show that later. And then you have mesh, or multiple meshes for some models, and that's the shape of the model. And when we go into this settings, which is called scene, here you have all the specific things for StarCraft 2 models. Here you have import, which can be used either the way I did it, or you can write the exact location in the computer where you have your model saved and import it this way. Also, you can change the setting, which is very important, because if you import everything, you import it also with the animations, particles, completely everything. But if you select just mesh with materials only, it will only import the shape of the model and its textures, which is good if you want to import only some parts which you want to put on the original model, which is what kit bashing is about, and that's pretty much all I do. So yeah, that's about that. And when you put these settings, it works on this version as well as this version, so it's pretty good. Same works with export. You can either export it this way, or you can export it wherever you want, because this way you put it in some default folder, and I don't know where that is. Bone visibility, that's something I didn't really look into, but I don't think you will need it either. Animation sequences, that's on the other hand more important. Here on the bottom side you have timeline, and you can select all the animations and see how they look. And this is also necessary if you want to change the animations or create new ones, which you can easily add here. But I'm not really good at doing animation from the get-go, so it's easier to just duplicate some of them and edit. But that's for another video. But just that you know. Sub animations, I don't know exactly how this works, but it is required for some of them. And if you select this is used for the animations that run all the time. For example, I don't know, the glow that is around Archon, around Protoss Archon, that works this way. It's just animation that runs together with other animations. It doesn't matter if the Archon is attacking or moving, this animation is running all the time. Then you have materials, which is the pretty important part. That's what the texture is. Some people don't know the difference between the model and texture. Model is the shape, as you see it. It's now completely red. It's just a shape. And texture is the color that is on top of it. And that makes it look as it should. Let's say, not just one color. So there are several materials. I'm pretty sure that Jackal texture is the texture of the model itself, and the other ones, one of it will be the flame on the flamethrower, and the other one will be some kind of dirt. Usually particles have their own materials. So this is how it works. You can see the properties. There is much to select and change, but that's also for another video. This is just introduction, so you know what all is here. And you can always go back to this video, so you know what I was talking about and where to find it. And there is material layers. You can see I have selected this material, and there is smoke. So that's the particle that the helium does when it is moving. And there are many layers. The most important ones, or the ones that are used the most, are diffuse, specular, emissive, and normal. There are some others, but that's for more advanced editing. Then we have cameras. That's something you don't have with unit models. That's what works with portraits. You can actually move the camera. It's like a small object, also part of the armature. And it just makes the view you see in game from which angle you look at the portrait and from which distance. You can change all that, but it takes quite a lot of time. I personally spent like at least half an hour if I want to change the angle quite a lot, because I have to try it, then put it in game, see how it looks. It's bad, I have to move it to the left or make it a little closer, change the angle a bit. So things like that. Then we have particle systems, and that's what you can see here. With the numbers on your keyboard, you can move the model around, or perhaps it's different with your settings. So with the numeric keyboard, and you can see this particle, which is probably the smoke, and then there's another one, and you can see it's around the barrel of the helium turret, so that would be the flame. You can also change these ones. There are many settings on color. Some of the particles have their own color, you can change here, and some of them use texture. So it's quite tricky, you have to find it out, which ones have the color and which ones not. Because these ones which have color, you just change the color and that's it. And for those which have texture, you have to change the texture, either to some already existing one or completely new one you create. And the same it is with the ribbons. Ribbons are, let's say, a different type of particle. You can imagine them as trails. They are used, for example, for ships, which have the trails behind them when they move. Also for zealot charge and things like that. And these tend to break quite a bit in Blender. So usually all you have to do is delete them and just live without them, because they don't work quite well. Ribbon endpoints, that's some settings I didn't really work with yet. Forces, also rigid bodies, physical shapes, Those are all things I didn't really use. Also this node. Lights, that's something you see with certain models. When, for example, when they shoot, it makes a little flash on the model. For example, I think Marine has it too, or Siege Tank. So that's it. And this is also not used. Projections, I think I used it once or twice, but I don't really remember how it works. Warp fields, also not. Particle system copies, not exactly sure what that is for. Attachment points, that's something that is very useful, because that's used in game. You can see it that some weapons origin from certain points of the model, or some buffs get placed somewhere, and that's exactly what is here. You can see that now I have selected the weapon attachment, which is exactly on the barrel. Then you have target, and I think the target, that's not just single point, it's a kind of sphere, and that's where the projectiles should hit the unit. So this is pretty much the hitbox of the unit. Origin point, that's exactly at the bottom part of the model. Overhead, that's above it. Every model standardly has this one, but it's not really used all the time. And turret Z is something that is used with models that have turret that can move on its own. For example, Hellion, or let's say Immortal, Colossus. Each of these units have this attachment point because it makes the turret able to aim on its own without the rest of the model. That's quite useful. I'm not sure how to create it, so I usually use it from already existing models. Hit tests, that also has something to do with the hitbox. So that's also something you need to set in order for the model to look right in game, because otherwise it would be really weird. And there's also tight hit test. I think some models, at least Protoss models, have shields also somewhere in these hit tests, if I'm not mistaken. Or maybe this is it, I'm not really sure how it works. So that's all we have here. Then I just want to point out some important things we will be using. First, we have modes right here. Object mode is just the mode that lets you select a certain object. We have two of them, the armature and the mesh. Then you have edit mode, which lets you edit it. You can just move certain point of the model or some part of it, but we will have a look at that later. And then there are more settings, at least for mesh, which I don't really use, but I'm sure they can be used for texturing as well. And for the armature, there is also pose mode, which we were in, and that lets you change the animations. Edit mode for this one, just these are the bones or attachment points and everything, and it lets you move them around and change the skeleton itself. Okay, I hope this is at least somewhat understandable. I know it's a lot for first time, so maybe if you have some questions, I can always answer those later. I just hope you understand me, because that's my biggest fear about this. I know my English isn't terrible, but it's much better when it is written and not when it is spoken. So what we have here next is setting for the armature, and we have pose mode and rest position. When you want to edit the model, it's good to use rest position, because it's something you know from some games as T-posing. That's the default pose that the model has, and that's good when you want to edit the model. Pose mode you use when you want to work with animations. It doesn't change much, but let me show you an example. I think when I go walk start, then the Helion does something like this. And this is how it looks in pose mode, and I go rest and it is in the default position. So that's pretty much it. Also when you go... I think I will leave that for later, because we don't need that much. And for models, it's... I don't know if it's model or model, whichever is better, I don't know, but I think you understand me in this one. Here you have some also important things, because these are vertex groups, which is something I can show you in the edit mode. And for example, you have chassis, you select it, and these are all the parts that are connected to the chassis bone. And also this one. There you have turret, and it means that these parts move with the certain bone of the model. So that will be used a lot when you want to add some parts. Let's say I will want to put some small satellite on the turret. Then I will want to attach it exactly to this bone, to the turret. Then another important thing, or at least I like to use it, is material, because this one shows you exactly what material is used by this particular mesh. Because if I would have two meshes and just look in here, then I see all the materials and I don't know which one is for the mesh I want. So I just select the one I want and it shows me exactly here. So that's really good when I want to change the texture. And talking about textures, I think it's time we go to StarCraft 2 editor again and go to art, image, and search for, I hope it's called Helion, but this is also a good thing to check, because now I can go here. Yeah, it's called Helion Diffuse, which is the main... Diffuse is always the main colored texture which the model has. Specular is the reflections that you have from certain angle, makes the model look more metallic or something like that. Emissive is the glow. It's especially used with the Protoss models, some glowy gems on their armor or the eyes, something like that. And then there is normal, which is used for small details, when you can see some kind of depth in the model. I don't know how to really explain it well, but it's some kind of surface, something like that. So now we see that this one is Helion Diffuse, so we will go here and find it. This one, and that's the texture we need, and I've exported it also to desktop, just like the model. And we can do one thing. I've shown these modes, but there are also other modes here, and these are used for, let's say, the visuals of the models. And there are I think 3 of them which I use the most. One is wireframe. That's when you want to look through the model and see something behind it. It's good when you need to find some bones and select them for the animations. Then is solid, which is the one I use the most. But I don't know, this is up to you, because then there is texture mode, which shows the texture. And since we didn't select any, it's just white, but we can change that. I personally changed the timeline window into this one and open the texture that I used before. Okay, once again I need to have selected edit mode, then press A on your keyboard. That will select the complete model or all the parts. They are called vertices. These are just the single points. Then there are edges, which are the lines, and then you have faces, which are these little two-dimensional shapes. So I select it all and now do it again, or I can select it here. Otherwise I just need to open the image, but I've already imported this one and I do this. That means it will select everything that is needed, and when I go into texture mode, you can now see the textured version of the model. This is up to you, because I personally work with the models in the solid mode and use the texture one only for some specific models, or if I need to see exactly where some part of the texture is located, or I use it for changing the texture, because you see the texture down here, and when you want to edit it, then you open it in some software, and now you want to edit, okay, if you want to edit cockpit, it's quite simple, you can see where it is. But let's say I want to edit this part, and now when I select it, when you hold Ctrl and plus after you select one piece, it will automatically select the entire part of the model. And now you can see clearly where it is located and what you need to change on the texture in order to change this part of the model. At least the texture of it. The shape you can change right here. You can scale it, you can translate it, you can rotate it, which is something I think I can show you just for fun. These are very useful things. Or you can also delete it, which is somewhere here, and when you press delete faces, it will delete the entire selected part. But back to the three things I've shown you. When you press the translate, it can move like this, but when you press X, Y or Z, you will move it around one of the axes. For example, I press X and I can move it just like this, which is pretty good if you just want to move it from one side of the model to another and don't want to move it randomly somewhere in space, because that usually ends up horribly. Same with the rotation. Also you can rotate it like this just by pressing one of the letters, because otherwise you will rotate it absolutely in a weird way. And same works also with scale. You can scale it just, let's say I want to make it taller or higher. I can do something like this. And when you press Ctrl Z, it will go all back. So that's probably it. And you can also change one thing, but Yeah, I will also leave that for later. Or maybe I can show you now, but it won't be really useful. Let's say I select, I don't want to select this, but for example I select the barrel, and when I go with my mouse over this texture and press A, then it will select all the pieces, but not on the model, but on the texture, and I can move them in the same way. There are also shortcuts for those three commands I've shown you, for the translate, rotate and scale. Translate is G, so you press G and you can move it. R or R is rotate, and S is scale. And also it works the same way. You press G, then you press X, and you can move it just here. And what this does is that you move the source of the texture for the specific part. That means if I do this, then now the barrel should use the part of the texture that is normally used for the cockpit. So now I have a yellow barrel, which is not useful in this case, but when you are more advanced with this, you can use it, because you can then connect parts of the textures from different models and use them together, which can be sometimes really useful. Okay, and what can I show you next? I think there are also different modes, because parts of the model or parts of the texture is alpha layer, which is let's say partly transparent or completely transparent, and in case of this texture it works with the theme color. These parts which I now see are theme colored, so this may be useful also. Here you can see the normal texture plus the alpha layer. Here you can see just the normal texture, and here just the alpha layer. You can switch between these modes. You can really switch between a lot of things. And another thing what I think might be useful is the animations. So I will go back into object mode. What I did here is another window. You can always put it back. You just catch this little corner and drag it, which creates a new window behind it. And here I can go into graph editor, and this way I can work with animations. I will do some small example, because this is really not something easy. It needs more explanation how to work with animations, much more. So I will do just some short example how it looks, but I will do another video about that. I plan to do complete series. I think I will start just with the introduction, so you see what all you can use, and then I will start from the most easy steps, or the regular steps that you will be using, and then move on to some more difficult stuff. So I will go into pose mode after selecting the armature, and go to animations, and let's say I want to edit the stand animation, and I want to edit, let's say I want the turret to be aiming upwards. So I will go into the wireframe mode, so I can go and find the bone which moves with the turret. should be this one. When I put it back to texture and no, okay. Now it showed me an error because I didn't go to pose mode, pose position. Now it should let me move. Yeah. So what I can do, I just put back the timeline, because that's important when working with animations. I'll go at the start. I put new keyframe. You just press I on the keyboard, and then you can select what all you want to keyframe. I don't know how to explain it better, but you just I really can't. But you just select if you want location, rotation, scaling, and I think I will better explain it when I show you. So let's say we want to rotate the turret. So I will press rotation. I will put it at the start of the timeline. I will also do the same at the end of the timeline, which means that with the beginning of the animation and the ending of the animation, the turret will be like this, as it is. And then I'll go somewhere in the middle. I'll go to rotate. I rotate it up and press I, rotation, and now when I play the animation, it should move up and down. It works like this. Now it might seem easy, but it really is not, and usually when you do thing in one animation, it may mess up another one, but I don't want to scare you. So I think that's maybe all. So yep, I'm just thinking what else I could show you. Maybe the modification of the model. So I go back to object mode, select mesh, go to edit mode, and let's say I want to make the cockpit a little bigger. You can hold left shift and click on another faces or vertices or edges, but it's most of the time it's best to work with faces, unless you need to move, let's say, a single point. I will show it right here. I want to move or make this more pointy, so I select only the one point at the front of the body, and then go translate and go Y, which lets me translate the one point along the Y axis, and this is how it can be. So I go back to select faces, and let's say I select somewhere. I think this should be enough. And now I want to make the upper part a little wider. So I go scale, but I don't want it to be longer. So I go scale, then press X and just do it this way. Move the mouse cursor to the side and it will get bigger. So this is the way that you can edit the model itself, but that's not what I usually do. This is just some finishing touches where some parts of the models collide in one into another, or if I want to delete some part of the model that I no longer think is necessary. And yeah, that's it. Otherwise I just get one model, then import another and put a part of it to the first model. And that's what I will show in the second episode. So I think this is everything for this one. I hope you will like it, or that you learned something from this one, because I'm not really sure. I really need some feedback about this. If you understand me well, if you know what is going on, if I should slow down, or just really any kind of feedback, just not the one from High Templar that I don't need. And yeah, that's it. So thank you for watching, and see you with some next episode. Bye.